Hello and welcome to The Conversation, the program that takes you around the world to meet extraordinary women. I'm Kim Chakaneta. Today we are embracing isolation, extreme weather, darkness and polar bears, all in the name of science. We'll be travelling to the polar regions, the Arctic and Antarctica. For centuries, polar exploration and research was considered a male endeavour. But in recent years, women have broken the ice ceiling, participating in groundbreaking research projects and leading exploration missions to the North and South Pole. Today, we're going to meet two of these pioneering women. Hilda Fallenstrom is an explorer and citizen science based in Longyearbyen, the world's northernmost town in the Norwegian Arctic. Hilda and her expedition partner, Sunniva Sorby, ran Hearts in the Ice, a project raising awareness about climate change. In 2020, they became the first team made up entirely of women to overwinter in the high Arctic, where they gathered data for climate change research. Welcome, Hilda.
Thank you, Kim.
And Dr. Irene Schloss is an Argentinian biologist based in Ushuaia, the world's southernmost city. She is a principal investigator with the National Council on the Research of Argentina for the Instituto Antártico Argentino and the Austral Center of Scientific Research. She holds a PhD in biological oceanography, and for the past 25 years, she's been monitoring the impact of climate change on plankton and other marine life in Antarctica. Welcome, Irene.
Thanks for the invitation.
Now, I've heard that in the Svalbard archipelago, there are more polar bears than humans. So how big is the population there, roughly, of humans, firstly?
2,400 people living on this archipelago and roughly 3,000 polar bears in this region.
Wow. What made you go there?
It was the adventure. It was this very unknown, unfamiliar land way up there close to the North Pole, with so different nature and wildlife.
Now, Irene, you live in a city that's known as the end of the world. So where does your fascination with the Antarctica come from?
Well, Antarctica has been like a dream for all of my life. I studied biology and as an ecologist, the ecologist I would become, and then a biological oceanographer later on. Antarctica was really the objective, the place to go to. And once I managed to be there, once I arrived there, the feeling of being in this fantastic place, it's so overwhelming, it's so beautiful, so extremely, it's powerful. There's an energy there, and it inspires respect, and it inspires you all kind of good things. You really feel like you should take care of that and study it and understand it. And so,
I love that. That inspires respect. And that description, powerful, is a really interesting one. Hilda, do you agree with that description? I mean, what has been your experience just in terms of when you first arrived and sort of seeing this expanse of white? How would you describe that feeling?
Yes, I can totally see what Irene says. It's... The first meeting I had with Svalbard was also so powerful. I felt immediately I felt grounded here. I felt a connection to nature that I never experienced before. It's this land without trees, this wide open spaces. I came late summer, actually in less than a week. It's 27 years ago. And it was just a little powder of snow in top of the mountains, but this enormous areas so close to the North Pole, and knowing that you are so small in this big, beautiful world of nature and extreme wildlife.
Right. Now let's go back to 2017, Hilda, when you started a science and communication project that raises awareness about climate change. Why did you decide to do that in the first place?
I guess you can say that my house burned down as a metaphor. Back in 2015, we had an avalanche that destroyed 11 of my neighbor houses, just right outside my house wall. It was just meters away, and I was very much involved in the rescue operation. 17 people were buried inside their homes, and 2 people died, a 2-year-old girl. that day changed my life. And I had then already for decades seen the changes in the temperature and in the climate. And I really wanted to look for an opportunity to make a difference, to engage myself in any way to help. And then the year after, I met Sunniva in the Alaska area, and she had her experience from where you're from, Irena, or where you're working down in the Antarctica area. We had both the same experiences, these big changes in the temperature and the ice and the sea ice, the glaciers. So then we decided to create Hearts in the Ice. And I literally invited her to come up here to Svalbard, and I had access to a trapper's cabin. So I invited her for a overwintering up here.
And what were you hoping to do when you invited her to go overwintering? What were you hoping to achieve by that?
Since we planned for a full overwinter during the winter, we could collect data throughout the winter in the darkness, 3 months of complete darkness, so remote and so far away from any human being or any settlement.
Right. So that was in 2019. So talk me through your living conditions. Where would you be staying? You mentioned like a trapper's cabin, but describe that to me and what was available to you in terms of electricity and running water.
Yeah, well, none of that actually.
Oh, dear.
So this was a trapper's cabin built back in 1930 for beluga hunting, and it's uninsulated. It's the size of your garage, I guess, 20 square meter. It's uninsulated, no running water, and no Netflix, no neighbors, no nothing, no stores around. and except polar bears, of course, and reindeers. Okay. So yeah, it was a huge change in life. We gave up our full-time job and were really determined that this was going to be a powerful platform for engaging individuals for actions and dialogue around climate change.
I want to know more about that, but just a quick practical question. With no running water, how do you deal with showers and just staying clean?
We didn't have any running shower or any shower. We didn't have that for 9 months, actually. So the way we worked around that was once in a while a dip into the ocean, but that's freezing cold. That's like 4 at the best, 4 Celsius. But I didn't wash my hair more than maybe once every 2 weeks. Right. So it was a change in my normal behavior.
But what about the toilet situation? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, for the first 4 or 5 months, the hut is situated on the beach or 60 meters away from the open ocean. So we did what we needed to do at the shoreline. But after maybe a few winter storms and complete darkness, and we had to, of course, follow to always be 2 outside, both of us. That was not so convenient or fun anymore. So we had a tiny little shed attached to the hut.
Irene, listening to Hilda describe this, is this something that appeals to you, this lifestyle?
Yeah, well, actually, I've been in Antarctica around 10 times. And one of my field works was in a station, which was actually a refuge. And so same situation. We had heating, but we didn't have tap water. So what for our bath or our personal hygiene, we would just melt snow.
Irena, you've taken part in 10 missions to Antarctica. So just explain to me, what would you be doing on a daily basis? What do the missions involve?
My work as a biological oceanographer, I would go out in a kind of zodiac boat, a rubber boat, and collect water for different purposes, measuring the biomass, studying the photosynthesis processes, would allow me to relate our results on plankton with climate and with other processes as well.
And Hilda, what was your daily routine like at the hut?
It started very early. throughout the year, the hut was cold and it was freezing cold during winter. So I started up maybe 6 o'clock in the morning with the wood burning stove, and then listening to the wind and looking at the temperature outside, sort of before I went out to sort of understand the weather, try to understand the weather. And then the next step was to open the window shutters. We had window shutters in order to prevent the polar bear to jump in through the window during nights. So open them, look at the weather, see what was possible to do that day. And then we did some science work. We'd maybe had a classroom with kids from all over the world together with experts that were experts on climate change. We spoke to actually 100,000 kids through a satellite dish in a suitcase outside the hut through our stay. The stay ended up to be 19 months due to COVID. But the day was full of surprises, and the weather determined most of what we did. A polar bear visit could determine everything. The northern light during the day or during the night was also something that we measured and had took time-lapse pictures of for NASA. Mm-hmm. So we had 7 ongoing science projects as citizen scientists.
So you mentioned polar bears and variable weather. What would you say were the main challenges you faced?
In a daily basis, I think the very strong weather, that it could be like hurricane and drift snow that could block our door and all our entrances. We had 3 months of complete darkness. Then you have the weather, and then you have polar bears lurking around. And we had more than 100 polar bear encounters during our stay.
How do you scare them away? If they're coming up close, what do you do?
Often we were inside the hut and heard a noise outside. And then we could have a polar bear on the door or at the window or on the top of the roof. So we went outside and we started to scare them off with a flare gun. That's like a small firecracker. That was very efficient. And I also had rubber bullets. And then, of course, I had a rifle and also a real revolver.
Irene, there are no polar bears in Antarctica, but I guess the environment there is pretty tough too. So what were some of the challenges that you faced when you were out there?
Yeah, the weather. The weather is the main challenge, especially when you go out on a boat, because weather can change very quickly. And once you're out or you're miles away of the base, then you have to be sure you can come back.
Hilde, you and your expedition partner Sunniva were 140 kilometers away from the closest town, and you had to endure harsh weather and 3 months of total darkness. What were some of the techniques that you developed to help you both cope?
This overwintering took us 2 years to prepare, but I think that Sunniva and I more or less has been preparing for this maybe for our whole life. To be able to cope. We're a strong, resilient woman, and it was very important for us to do physical training. So we had great routines. We did that every day. Either it was yoga or it was rubber bands, and also chopping wood and finding snow and ice for water. So we had a lot of tasks going on, but we had a few very, very efficient tools that I think is important to tell you guys about. And that the one thing was celebration. We celebrated our dinner in particular, even though we didn't have much to celebrate. We celebrate the little things we had. And also during the day, if we achieved something, I mean, it was only the 2 of us and we had to fix everything. The engine for the boat run into salt water, and I've never rinsed a fuse before. So the hinges on the door was ripped off during a hurricane. The VHF antenna broke and we had no communication. There was only the 2 of us and we had to fix all that. So when we achieved, or when we actually made that happen, we celebrated. That was big things, or it could be small things. And also gratitude. Gratitude was super important to us. Like me telling Sunniva, thank you for preparing dinner.
Irene, your missions were shorter, but you still spent a lot of time in close proximity with people you had to, live and work with. How was that for you, and what helped you?
I always try to talk things out. If I detect a little problem, or if something is clinging weird, so okay, let's have a little meeting. Let's discuss it. So of course you have to be there. You live with all these people that share the station with you, and who help you out in your daily tasks. Or it's also important to share time with them, to explain what we are doing, to explain why it is important, and then to share moments. And so, for instance, in the station where I mostly was, in Carlini station in the South Shetland Islands, in King George Island, which we call 25 de Mayo Island, there's a routine on the weekends. This is Saturdays, it's pizza time. Yeah. So we share a pizza, everybody, and beer. And it is someone from the scientific team that would help out to serve the pizzas to everybody. And sometimes you would help in the kitchen or to prepare the table or so. You always learn from these experiences, and finally they enrich you, and it's a positive outcome.
How would you say your experiences out there have enriched you?
The idea of connection, in a wide sense. Not only we are all connected as human beings, but we're very much connected to the environment. And what happens in Antarctica will influence the whole world.
Hilda, what do you think you've learned about yourself from your time out?
I really learned that silence is gold. I've never felt more connected to myself and to the natural world, and actually also to everyone that I love out there that has never been further away, but I felt so connected. And I also learned that I don't need much to be happy. Simple living is beautiful, and also I know that I can handle almost everything. And feeling part of something so much bigger, as you say, Irene, that you are such a small creature, but still we are so powerful. I saw the inspiration, and I saw the how we could advocate for what we were what we cared so much for. I protect what I love, and I think that can inspire other people to protect what they love.
Irene, the history of exploration and science in the polar regions is very male-dominated. But, Argentina was a pioneer. They were among the first to send female researchers to Antarctica. In your case, have you found that being a woman in the field has been an advantage or a disadvantage?
Being a young woman, a South American woman, I don't know, a renowned professor would tell me, yeah, you South American girls, you only care about how you look. So, what? Thank you. But what was that? It took some time until people could take me seriously.
Hilda, Irene mentioned that it took a little while to be taken seriously, but she got there. And I wonder, in your case, did you feel you had to work harder to be taken seriously?
I think so. Even though I have a lot of experience in the Arctic, much more than any man up here, really. So, but yes, for partners, for everyone we needed on board. But through the science system, I felt that we were heard early on. But yes, it was harder for us to get the funding. I think it would have been much easier if we were two men doing the overwintering. By the way, I'm not sure if they would have survived as two men. But
why do you say that?
It's a little humor, but it is challenging to be two people this close in a trapper's cabin where you actually are a little trapped inside in bad weather. You can't go out for yourself. You are together 24/7. But we had a goal, the two of us, and we were so strong together. And I think we need some sort of a care or something. It's easier, I think, for women to look a little aside of just ourselves and our ego to see the bigger picture and to take care of each other. But yes, it was really hard in the beginning, but we gained the respect we needed to get further. And the science, like NASA, Norwegian Polar Institute, all of those were super happy for us going. And I have to say that female communities are super strong. And I do believe that women can do everything they set as a goal. No doubt about it.
As long as we get funded, it's fine. Yeah. But sometimes it's hard, even if we now are more or less equal in number, scientists, female and male, we still get underfunded when compared to what male get.
Yep.
And at least this crystal ceiling, the ice ceiling, I like that one. The ceiling we have, it's still there.
You've both dedicated your lives to raise awareness about the impact of climate change on the polar regions. What gives you hope, Hilde?
I believe in us. I believe in us as a species. I still do. I think that what I've experienced through youth and kids on the classroom, the platform we had, and I could see how inspired they were by the expert we brought along to on the call, like Jen Goodall and David Suzuki and Wade Davis and all these experts. And we've also seen how we as a collective can move when we have to, like during COVID. So what I really want to speak to is that we need more awareness, and we see that. Eventually, we see that people are talking about climate change. We're talking about what we as individuals can inspire to become collective actions.
I can feel hope if all these messages we're trying to pass, if they have an impact now or very, very soon. We don't have much more time. And that fears me. I have hope. I think as a species, exactly as Hilde said, as a species, we can react together, we can work together, and the young generations are our biggest hope, but we have to help them out to reach their goals. And this is today, this is now. We don't have more time.